Hey everyone, I'm the Vegan Thrash Punk and welcome to my top 10 favorite hardcore punk albums.
Hooray! 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 The other side called the cops! Now
I thought this would be a very fun idea as a first video, and making this list was easily one of the most difficult lists I probably ever made, considering hardcore punk has been my favorite genre of music for over 15 years.
With making this list, I'm only including strictly hardcore punk albums. While some of these bands I included may have eventually become crossover thrash bands or other metal-related genres, I'm including albums from them before they decided to change their styles.
So the order of this list isn't in any specific order other than my number one, which I will explain why that album holds a near and dear place in my heart. Also with this list, I won't go too far into each band's history or anything like that. I'm just going to explain why this album made the list. I may also tell a little bit about discovering it and some favorite songs and stuff, but I can already tell this video will be long. So without further ado, let's begin.
We're going to start this list off with The Crew by Reno's 7 Seconds. I remember discovering 7 Seconds from the Tony Hawk's American Wasteland soundtrack back in 8th grade, and I just fell in love with them. I listened to The Crew from start to finish and just thought, whoa. With 24 songs on this album, including the live tracks, we got a lot of fantastic material. Some of the most memorable songs for me include the opening track, Here's Your Warning, and the anthem like Young Till I Die. Some other fantastic tracks include Not Just Boys Fun, Boss, What If There's a War in America, and This Is the Angry Part 2. Very straightforward and fast hardcore punk. The production still holds up in my opinion. However, 7 Seconds would go on to produce more polished and melodic material, which is still good in my opinion. Kevin Seconds' voice was incredible, and actually still is to this day. I've seen them twice and have been fortunate enough to catch Kevin's acoustic project 3 times as well. He's one of the nicest old school punks I've ever met.
I remember showing him my 7 Seconds patch that I had on my pants, and he was so excited over it. He even signed it for me. Oh, scope this. I have their logo on my arm. Speaking of tattoos, I always remember seeing his acoustic set back in 2014, and he saw... Sorry, wrong arm. My Minor Threat tattoo. And he got excited and showed me the one he had on his leg. Kevin Seconds is a rad dude. Very rad dude. If you get a chance to see his acoustic set, do it.
LA Weekly placed The Crew at number 3 on its list of the top 20 hardcore albums in history, and stated that 7 Seconds wrote the book on positive hardcore, and that book is called The Crew. With a combination of 3-chord punk, raw sound, and Kevin's melodic and passionate voice, this album easily takes the cake in my top 20 hardcore punk albums of all time. Unfortunately, 7 Seconds did break up in 2018. We all know what the first song I heard from this California hardcore punk album was, the popular Institutionalized. When I heard that track, I was hooked. Mike Muir's spoken style of vocals over the instrumentals provided by Grant Estes, Luigi Mayorga, and Amory Smith are perfect, jumping from a straightforward beat and eventually exploding into the fast hardcore punk beats that are present in every song on this album. Grant Estes also provides some of the best shredding of any hardcore punk band I've ever seen.
And no disrespect to Rocky George and Dean Pleasance, though. All great guitarists. It's just a shame that Grant was only around for one album. Funny story about Luigi as well. One of my bands opened for his band, Suicidal, a couple years back. And he actually asked me if he could use my bass rig since I guess his wasn't working or something. You bet I let him use it. Very nice guy. He was super appreciative. 10 out of 10. Would play with him again, would kick it with him, if given the opportunity.
This album is just an absolute banger from start to finish, opening up with the insane Suicide's an Alternative, You'll Be Sorry, and closing with the classic Suicidal Failure. This album only slows down a few times. During slower songs such as Subliminal, Institutionalized, I Saw Your Mommy, I Want More, and Suicidal Failure, they managed to find spots in these songs to speed up and just go full ballistic. I may not be a huge fan of Suicidal's more metal stuff, but you bet when someone selects a track from this album, I'm gonna yell at them and tell them to play the entire thing. Some of my personal favorites from this album include I Shot the Devil, Memories of Tomorrow, and Possessed. I've seen these guys 4 times, and it seems like they're not slowing down anytime soon. I'm also very stoked that they have Dave Lombardo from Slayer and Ben from Dillinger Escape Plan in the band. It's an all-star lineup.
Satan's got a paper, gonna set my body free. He said, power and glory, riches and joy, all in your name and all forgiveness.
So, I might be cheating a bit here, but I have included a split album. Before I begin with this, I just want to say that Side A by The Faith is amazing. The band features Alec Mackay, who is the little brother of Ian Mackay, who we all know was the vocalist of Minor Threat, Embrace, Fugazi, and many other bands, and it serves as an excellent part of this album. However, it's side B that gets the spot for this. From the moment that the guitar on Who Are You begins, you know you are in for something insane. John Bubba Dupree is a seriously underrated guitarist. And John, I'm gonna butcher his name, John Wiefenbach's vocals are those of a madman. Void shows here that they are one of the earliest examples of hardcore metal crossover, with the pure chaotic approach they go with here. At times it seems like they're playing so fast that they can't even keep time. But hey, they make it work.
Hell, Kurt Cobain listed this album in his top 50 albums of all time. And regardless of whether you're a Nirvana fan or not, I would be personally grateful to make that list. Just saying.
I've said it before, but man, this album is pure chaos, and I love it. This is how hardcore punk should be. Some of my personal favorites include Time to Die, Condensed Flesh, My Rules, and Explode. Marilyn's Void is a band any fan of hardcore punk should check out. I also want to say rest in peace to drummer Sean Finnegan, who unfortunately passed away in 2008. I also want to note that guitarist Bubba Dupree is still playing music to this day, and has been a guest musician with artists such as Soundgarden, Moby, and Dave Grohl. The only official studio album by Detroit's Negative Approach takes number 7 on the list. I remember going on a hunt for hardcore punk bands back during my senior year of high school, and I discovered this album. John Brannon's vocals immediately caught my ear with how blistering they sounded. I later watched live footage and, oh man, John looked like the scariest and most intimidating dude ever.
Oh, it's funny. I remember going to see them years back when they played with the Casualties in MDC. I was at their merch booth and, I wanted to snag a tour poster. Looked badass. Would have, made a nice memory too. So I get the poster. I look over and I make eye contact with John Brannon. Like, super awkward. But he comes up to me and he's just like, I'll try to do his voice. Again, John Brannon, if you're watching this, sorry. But he's just like, hey man, you want me to sign that? And fuck. I fangirled. I was just like, yeah, dude, John, that fucking awesome set, man. And he was super appreciative. Glad I liked it, all that stuff. But very nice guy. Be super cool to see Negative Approach again. And hell, it'd be cool to chill with John Brannon. Very down to earth guy. Even after, the first impression where I'm like, ooh, he looks scary, he looks intimidating. No, he's very nice. Very, very nice.
I would have included Total Recall, which was a compilation album that included Tied Down, their Process of Elimination EP, and their self-titled EP, but I wanted to leave this list to actual studio albums. Anyway, Tied Down clocks in at a time of 16 minutes and 53 seconds, with only 10 songs. Most of these songs are, of course, fast as fuck, but even with slower tracks like Evacuate, Nothing, and Dead Stop, the album never loses its punch. Your Mistake and Friend or Foe are still 2 of the most fun songs to play on guitar, and 2 of my favorites from this album. It's time to get into the Boston hardcore punk scene with this next entry. Boston Society System Decontrol, or SSD for short, hit the ground running with their debut album, The Kids Will Have Their Say. One of my favorite straight-edge hardcore punk bands, this album became an everyday listen when I first heard it back when I was 18. Springa is an absolute beast on the mic, and Al Barrel's nasty guitar tone is the perfect complement to it. Again, I will probably get this name wrong, but along with Jamie Sciarappa's bass tracks and Chris Foley's drums, this album is perfect and probably my favorite Boston hardcore album of all time.
That album cover still cracks me up. Like, I love on the back of the dude's jacket, it's just like, the straight edge. The straight edge. I've literally never heard anyone say that. But hey, it's still a badass album cover and fucking phenomenal album.
Whenever I go to a show and mention these dudes, 99% of the time I will have someone repeating the chorus to Boiling Point with me, the album opener. This album is another straight up fast album. It only slows down during the tracks How Much Art and Police Beat, which sounds just as crushing as the rest of the tracks on the album. How Much Art is almost haunting in a way, with the way Springer repeats How Much Art Can You Take, along with the accompanying music and added reverb on his voice. Some of my favorite songs include Not Normal, War Threat, and Wasted Youth, which was actually the first song I ever heard from SSD. Thank you, YouTube. SSD would later change their sound to a more metal sound, and eventually break up, with Barrel going on to form Gage, Sciarappa joining Slapshot, and Springa joining Razorcane and Die Blitzkinder. Who am I? DRI. Texas band DRI takes the number 6 spot on this list with their debut album, The Dirty Rotten LP. When I first heard these guys during my junior year of high school, I couldn't believe just how fast these guys played and made it sound good. Hell, drummer Eric Breck was even one of the first people to perform the blast beat with this style of music. Bassist Dennis Johnson and guitarist Spike Cassidy belt out some of the sickest and fastest hardcore punk riffs. Meanwhile, Kurt Breck belts out vocals so fast that it's nearly impossible to understand anything he's saying. From the moment I Don't Need Society begins, you will be hooked.
I can talk about this band for days, but I just want to throw it out there like I've thrown it out there a million times. Some of the bands I played in the past have gotten to open for DRI multiple times. And Spike and Kurt, who are also the only original members of the band left, they've had several lineup changes. They're some of the coolest and most appreciative dudes ever. Also, Kurt Breck is probably my biggest influence in terms of like how I do vocals. You know, like I do hardcore punk and crossover style vocals. So that's, yeah, he's a big influence. Also, fuck it, I have the Skank Guy tatted on my rib cage. Again, no nudity, I swear. But yeah, man, DRI is one of my favorites. Like I said, I could talk for hours, but this video is already going to be long enough as is. But not just one of my favorite hardcore punk albums, literally DRI is one of my favorite bands of all time.
22 songs in 17 minutes. Yeah. You can listen to this album on repeat like 3 times under an hour, which is exactly what my friend Amos and I did non-stop in high school. DRI would later go on to start playing more thrash metal style stuff, and they actually coined the term crossover, which would be the name of their 3rd album, but also the style of music that combined hardcore punk with thrash metal. Their later stuff is great, and I honestly believe they have a flawless discography. Just a bummer that it's been 16 years since their last full-length album. Some of my favorites from this album include I Don't Need Society, Closet Punk, War Crimes, and Balance of Terror. Of course, this entire album is flawless. New York has no shortage of hardcore punk. However, it's Agnostic Front's Victim in Pain that was my first entry into hardcore punk from New York. The album opens with the explosive Victim in Pain and doesn't slow down until the final track, With Time. This album is incredible from start to finish and is still my favorite album from them. Their second album, Cause for Alarm, would have a more crossover style to it, and, well, it sounded amazing. However, Victim in Pain still remains my favorite.
You know, it sucks because I never truly got into Agnostic Front's later stuff. Again, no disrespect to them. I loved Victim in Pain so fucking much that it was just kind of harder to listen to their later stuff. You know, I've heard like For My Family, you know, Gotta Go. Their cover of Iron Cross is Crucified is fucking sick. But dude, like, I'd love to meet Roger Merritt and Vinny Stigma. Like, they seem absolutely cool. Just from the interviews, you know, from watching the Godfather's a Hardcore documentary. You know, I'm glad Roger's dealing with his health issues accordingly. I want to see him well. I want to see him live a long life because he's a fantastic frontman and just a fantastic dude. No joke. I could have probably made this list with nothing but hardcore punk from New York, but I didn't want to do that because there were just so many fucking bands that I wanted to put on here. So, you know, I just put Agnostic Front on here because they were my gateway to New York. I didn't really listen to New York hardcore punk. I just wasn't fully aware of it, I guess. So, yeah, Agnostic Front fucking rules.
Because of Agnostic Front, I later discovered bands like Warzone, Gorilla Biscuits, Youth of Today, Chromax, and of course Madball, who is led by Roger's half-brother Freddie. Roger would actually invite Freddie on stage to sing for Agnostic Front during their shows. This in turn inspired Freddie to form Madball. Some of my favorite songs include Fascist Attitudes, Blind Justice, and Power.
They look the same, why the father? It was camels, no thoughts. Don't let it wait, don't let it record.
When I first heard of the True Sounds of Liberty, someone described them as the West Coast Misfits. I listened to this album and thought, these guys are better than the Misfits.
Before I get attacked for that Misfits comment, I love the Misfits. I mean, you know, I have the Fiend Skull tatted on me. But there were just so many other bands that I wanted to put on this list. Again, I'll always love the Misfits, but, you know, it's a list of 10. But, dude, the combination of Ron Emery, Mike Roach, and Todd Barnes led to some fucking amazing tunes on this album. And even after that, even before that, you know, their debut EP wasn't horror punk at all. It was just straight hardcore punk from California. But yeah, I mean, they were good musicians. They still are. You know, rest in peace, Todd. Jack knew how to write some great lyrics and was just an absolutely charismatic vocalist. I don't know why I'm saying was, like they're still playing to this day. They just dropped the Complex Trigger a couple years back. Man, later TSOL rules. A lot of people hate on it, but nah, dude, they're doing what they love. It's got a very Damned feel, and I love the Damned. Again, not a hardcore punk band, so they don't go on this list. If you ask me to do an English punk list, they'll probably be number 1. Maybe number 2. GBH is a thing. Oh yeah, the Subhumans. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. This movie's long enough already. But seriously, like, just watch Suburbia. There's a scene in there where TSOL is playing Darker My Love and Wash Away. Like, he literally has girls flying up on stage and giving him kisses on the cheek. Like, Jack was a charismatic guy. Is a charismatic guy, even now in his 50s. Yeah, watch that movie. It's fucking awesome. It's got the Vandals and D.I. in it. I've met Jack Grisham, too. Very, very cool guy. There's a lot more I want to say, but, like I said, save it for another thing.
The album opens up with the sounds of laughter, which builds up with Todd's drums, then Mike's bass, and finally Ron's guitar before the verse kicks in and Jack starts singing. The album follows with the crowd favorite Code Blue and just absolutely gets better as the album progresses. This album may not be the fastest of the list, but man, Ron Emery is a seriously underrated guitarist. Just listen to tracks like The Triangle and Silent Scream, where things slow down a bit and he gets to showcase that he's more than just a guitarist who plays power chords. The album also features the song I'm Tired of Life, which, wow, I have felt that feeling so many times in my life. The music that accompanies it gives me chills. Just give it a listen.
Also, my buddy Amos, he was the one who actually got me into TSOL. He got me into DRI as well. We used to sit in his room and learn. We learned all a dance with me. He learned it on guitar, I learned it on bass, and we would just play TSOL songs. You know, we'd do the EP, we'd do a bit of the Weathered Statue stuff. Fun songs, man. Like, still fun to this day. I still remember them on bass. I don't know if I remember on guitar, but bass definitely. And I'll say this straight up. Check out the Weathered Statues EP. Thoughts of Yesterday is probably one of the greatest punk songs ever written. Again, my opinion, but god damn, that song is so fucking good. Go check it out right now. Well, watch the video and then check it out. Please, it's awesome.
TSOL definitely had a hit-or-miss career following the departure of Jack and Todd, but Jack came back to the band in the 90s, and they have dropped some seriously good, and honestly, underappreciated albums in the 2000s. This album was just too good when I first heard it, and I've honestly had it on repeat as of late as well. My favorite tracks on this album include Love Story and Silent Scream. Also, I want to give a shout out to Todd Barnes, who passed away in 1999, along with Marshall Roner, who passed in 2005 after playing with the band after Ron left. Rest in peace, guys.
Last night I lay awake, mouth was dry with the pain. Sometimes I wish that I would just die. Save me from seeing you again. I mean,
Oh man, I will probably get crucified for choosing this over Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, but just hear me out. Fresh Fruit is an amazing album, and it has some of the best Dead Kennedy songs of all time. But personally, this album is way more nostalgic for me, and the production sounded better, and the addition of D.H. Peligro on drums was a very welcome addition. No offense to Ted, of course. This album is also a lot darker and more hardcore than Fresh Fruit. It just has songs that I find myself listening to a lot more.
Also, holy crap, can we appreciate how amazing this fucking band is? I'm sorry, but East Bay Ray is one of the greatest punk guitarists of all goddamn time. Klaus Fluorite is one of the greatest fucking bassists in the genre. He's in my top 10 most influential bassists for me as a bassist. D.H. Peligro, such a fucking good drummer. You know, he later went on to play with the Red Hot Chili Peppers for a minute, and I don't know if I need to say anything about Jello Biafra. He's one of the best lyric writers, one of the smartest dudes in the punk scene. And, like, a lot of people might hate his voice. Oh, dude, I think it's amazing. Like, his delivery's fucking perfect. When you hear a song, obviously from the Dead Kennedys or from any of the projects Jello's in, you know it's a Jello project. You just know. Also, if I could just throw it out there, Jello has claimed that this is his favorite Dead Kennedys album.
Again, this album may not be as fast as Bedtime for Democracy or the In God We Trust Stink EP, but good God is it angry. Just listen to tracks like Riot and Bleed For Me. Jello has so much intensity behind his voice that it's difficult to not want to get up and mosh, whereas Fresh Fruit had Kill the Poor, California Uberalis, and Holiday in Cambodia. Plastic Surgery Disasters had Forest Fire, Riot, and Bleed For Me. Yeah, maybe not as well known as the former, but still amazing pieces of music. Also, the closing track, Moon Over Marin, is one of my all-time favorite punk songs, and it is so beautiful. Side 1 is amazing, but man, Side 2? Like I said, some of my favorites include Moon Over Marin, Riot, and Bleed For Me.
come on, play! Come on, play! Come on, play! Play!
So, it is time for my all-time favorite hardcore punk album. I might get a bunch of laughs for this one, but you know what? I don't care. This band and album made the absolute world to me. I'm sure a lot of people might disagree. I'm sure a lot of people will agree. Hell, a lot of people might just agree because they love the band, you know. But anywho.
I fucking love the Descendents. They are another band who I view as having a perfect discography. Whereas many of these albums are filled with rage both musically and lyrically, Milo Goes to College had the perfect combination of hardcore punk and melody, while still holding that bitter resentment. You have songs like I Want to Be a Bear and M16, which show shades of what they did with the Fat EP. But you also have songs like Marriage and Hope, which are about love and heartbreak, respectively.
Even though this album showcased a lot of pop elements, I still view it as a hardcore album. And like I said, I'm sure a lot of people will agree. The Descendents, especially at this time, weren't just a lovey-dovey pop band back then. They still had the edge of a hardcore band. However, they loved bands like the Beatles. Nothing wrong with that. I don't really care for the Beatles. I don't hate them, but just not my cup of tea. But yeah, they wrote about more than just politics. They wrote about shit like fishing and, the parents, coffee, food, girls. The band's logo is so damn iconic and so damn cute. I mean, look, dude. It's little Milo. Little Milo. I'm not flipping you guys off, but little Milo. Again, I had to pick this album over I Don't Want to Grow Up. I love I Don't Want to Grow Up, but that album was a lot more poppier than this, in my opinion.
The Descendents are considered to be the pioneers of pop punk, but back then, they had the ethos of a hardcore punk band. And the sound, for that matter. I mean, most of this album doesn't even sound like what they would later write. Tony Lombardo was such an amazing bassist, and practically carried all the songs. Frank Nevada unfortunately passed away in 2008, but man, his riffs and style of playing were incredible, and Bill Stevenson is straight up one of the best and most diverse drummers in the California punk scene. Just check out his work in Black Flag and All. Songs like I'm Not a Loser, Parents, M16, and I'm Not a Punk showcase all of the elements of a straight up hardcore punk band. Meanwhile, the last 4 tracks of the album, Marriage, Hope, Bikeage, and Gina's Dead, are absolutely poppy numbers.
This fucking album is incredible. I don't know how else to put it. My friend Taylor and I, we met in like 8th grade, became best friends, and we were the only punks in our little town. And once summer hit, this was our album. It was weird because, I'll keep this short, we were always pissed off, we hated everybody, and then summer rolled around and we had crushes on a couple girls and stuff, and this album spoke to us, all the love songs that Milo wrote and stuff. Like I said, the last 4 tracks on the album, they were super lovey-dovey songs. It was a weird time. It was a different feeling for us. Like I said, we were both in 8th grade. This album just resonated with us hard. Hell, I'll straight up say it. Bikeage is one of my favorite punk songs of all time. I know I keep saying that. This song's my favorite punk song of all time. I can make a list of my favorite punk songs of all time. But yeah, Bikeage is one of them, and it hits me hard every time I hear it. I'm not going to go into details. I mean, read the lyrics. I'm not going to talk about personal shit, but yeah. It's an amazing album, and I will still consider it a hardcore punk album to this day.
Like I said, this was a difficult list to make. There were so many albums I wanted to include. Damaged by Black Flag, Group Sex by the Circle Jerks, City Baby Attacked by Rats by GBH, Break Down the Walls by Youth of Today, Still Screaming by Scream, which is an absolutely underrated album that I feel like everybody should check out. I also didn't include Minor Threat, which was kind of weird considering, yeah, I absolutely love Minor Threat. But I don't know, man. These 10 albums I included have always been the ones that I've played more than any other hardcore punk album I have ever listened to.
Trust me, there are so many bands and albums that I wanted to include. The Debut by The Adolescents, The Record by Fear, Los Angeles by X. I know that wasn't a hardcore album, but, they got lumped in there. Still a damn good album. Start Today by the Gorilla Biscuits. The Bad Brains self-titled. Articles of Faith. My favorite genre, or favorite subgenre, favorite scene of hardcore punk, the Oxnard scene. You know, bands like Aggression, RKL, Dr. No. Kind of hard for those albums because they didn't really have like studio albums. They had like compilations and shit. Plus, I didn't get into nardcore as early as a lot of these other bands, so kind of had to leave them off. But yeah, just, you know, a reminder. This is my first top 10 list that I've made in video format. So, man, you bet this was kind of a crazy undertaking for me. If you guys like this video, please hit like and subscribe. You know, I'd appreciate the hell out of it. And, you know, if you watch this, thank you. That's cool. I'm also going to post, you know, my covers here. And, maybe start doing album reviews. Again, I got to get better at doing album reviews first, because I've never really tried it. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I'm the Vegan Thrash Punk, and you guys have a great night. Thanks again.